Welcome to another episode of Understanding Autism. And this video is actually really important to me. I really wanted to make it because when I began my deep dive on understanding, especially the female phenotype of autism, and yes, we know there are many types and anyone can have the female phenotype. And by the way, more and more research continues to emerge. Some of them are calling it the internalized version in some way. We're still looking for, I think, a term, but historically present in qualities we might see in hyperempathic, high-masking females, those who are fitting this prototype that don't really fit the current diagnostic criteria. We're still seeing that. And so as I began to understand that and as I continue, it's really given me permission to embrace and love and understand myself without that harsh lens of judgment that I think I have internalized in so many ways. Why are you so picky? Why does everything bother you? Those kind of things. So these are the top 10 things I think that can be impacted by not understanding a diagnosis of something like high-masking autism, and why I think it's so important for you, if you're considering these dynamics, to do further research and educate yourself more, watch creators, read books, listen to podcasts, all of the things. Number one, chronic fatigue. My body shutting down and not being able to do things that my brain wanted to do. Now, of course, all of this can be influenced by genetics and trauma, generational trauma, all of the above. But a lot of people have talked about with autism, just whether it's increased risk of chronic pain, comorbidities like eating issues or OCD, anxiety, all of the things that affect the energy with which your body is able to flow and move in the world. So historically, why can't I do the things I want to do when my body is depleted? Alongside that, many of us, because of autism and childhood trauma, have learned to disregard and ignore our internal cues. We're thirsty, we're tired, we're doing too much. And if you have that layer, which almost everyone does, of trauma with autism, you could have something like workaholism, for example, my fear of losing everything, making me push past when I'm really tired, or not exercise and work instead. So all of those things can contribute. So really the idea is that you have this limited supply perhaps of energy that you're going to run out of one day. Morgan Foley just made a great video about this. I just saw it, I think on TikTok. I think she reposts here on YouTube as well. But this idea that, one day there was just not going to be enough energy to do anything. And so we know as well that the autoimmune conditions, all of the things that can affect energy levels can be affected. So reframing, understanding to listen to my body cues, to take more breaks, to give myself permission to have more downtime. This is incredibly important. Having repeated friendship experiences not go well, with everything from choosing friends who replicate trauma to choosing friends who you don't do a good job of self-advocating for with yourself. So they make a lot of passive-aggressive comments and you don't speak up for yourself. And what I've noticed is that many of us, because we can be chameleons and good at making friends, but we're not really in it. And or we stay in it and we feel so great and there's so much pressure on this one friendship. But then when things don't go well, we want to remove ourselves, or we ghost them, or we just feel even more alone in the world. So friendship issues being really complex, not just a matter of, I can't find or make friends, both the role in finding and making and how the friends I've chosen and how I have shown up or not in friendships. So this is important to reevaluate. What are you looking for in terms of connection? Sorry, I had a cat situation there. So all of those things can be so impactful. So looking at, what are you looking for in friendships? What does matter? And being both open to new friendships, but also bringing more of your authentic self in. Number 3, being constantly labeled as high maintenance. So what's wrong with you? Why does everything bother you? With, the temperature of the food, the temperature of the place, the smells, the sounds, the noises, everything being so just, I can't deal with that. And that creating this illusion that you can't tolerate anything. And frankly, many of us struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. Most people that I know who have pretty significant sensory issues, peopling is stressful. Human beings can be very stressful. So looking at how you want to reframe that, learning to listen more to your internal cues of what you need, more rest, more water, more exercise, things like that. But really just not seeing yourself as someone who just can't tolerate things. Having compassion, maybe pushing yourself sometimes, but also I would say the flip side where I'm at right now is if I don't want to do that, I'm not doing that. And I'm not going to feel bad about it. Sorry, Coco and my new kitten are having a moment. Number 4, constantly feeling anxiety, just on edge. And I will say, as I keep talking about this, hypervigilant, learning to, because of my childhood trauma and relational trauma and the autistic piece, just always living as if the world is about to end. Everything is on fire. Overreading every cue in relationships. What does that mean? Are you mad at me? It always going back to what we did wrong. And this is a big one. We can be enmeshed from our childhood trauma and relationships, and I think from the way our brains work. And so learning how to separate that, nervous system regulation techniques, working on how you approach things. Like I literally wake up every day. It's like today's my last day to complete everything. Like it's ridiculous. And then I'll get frozen sometimes with all of that and then do nothing for hours. As many of you know, we all do this. And then that creates anxiety. So looking at your anxiety, your hypervigilance, working on tools to deal with those things. Number 5, feeling like an alien, just other than and different, and not knowing it, right? Just going through life thinking like, okay, like I feel like I'm like these people, but I'm actually not, but never having any language for what that was. Like I did not understand it. And I one time said to my son, this is so embarrassing to admit, we were laughing about autism and making you feel different. And I was like, well, I thought I was supposed to be like famous. And it was just like laughable. Like what? Yes, I love, drama and the arts and filmmaking, but it was just like, is that about wanting to be loved because you were not loved in childhood? Is that about your autism? Like, what is your problem? Nowadays, everybody, the lens of being famous is everywhere. But even back when I was very, very young, it was like, there's something special and weird about me. But the special did make me feel good about myself. It was just like, am I meant for something else? I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but that's what it feels like. Or being in a room full of people, and it's like everyone else, as I've talked about in this networking environment, they know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I would panic and leave. And yes, that's social anxiety and all the things, but at the core is like, why can't I get this right? What is wrong with me? I don't seem, one of these things is not like the other. Number 6 is alone time, and a lot of isolating and loving being alone. And yet seeing that prior to autism through the lens of, oh, you're just a raging introvert. Oh, you don't have tolerance for other people. And feeling kind of bad about it, or, oh, you're an only child. So, I was told you don't know how to share, which that's fair. I never really like to share my things, but I also think that might be related to neurodivergence as well. But my kids, I don't really care, but as much, for the most part, except for maybe my clothes with my daughter sometimes. But the bottom line is that seeing isolating and being alone is a bad thing. And that's why I'm such an advocate for what I'm calling the art of isolation, and what has been called, I guess I know I keep saying it, many of you guys on YouTube especially don't love the term girl rotting or bed rotting, though it is, like I keep saying, beautifully done in videos on TikTok. The bottom line, though, is that this of celebration of just quiet and peace and my favorite shows or reading books or my favorite meal, obviously too much of that can not be good for us either. But this idea that there's nothing wrong with that. So I don't think this one needs an explanation, but giving yourself permission to embrace that part. And only if you're longing for connection and lonely do you then want to push yourself. And I think most of us probably need to push ourselves because we can enjoy alone time too much. But also alone time is a place to explore hobbies and just, do all the things we love to do uninterrupted. Number 7 is constantly being triggered by sensory issues. So as I've talked about, the smell of weed in the neighborhood when you live in California by the beach, like every house, I don't mind the weed, but I hate the smell of it. My dog, one of my dogs, we lost this last year. Just her whole life, she just smelled so bad. And for me, smell is my number one sensory trigger. And so for me, it can bring up a rage response, just like misophonia. Having that sort of neurological response to chewing sounds and mouth sounds, which I try to edit out even here because I do it. I almost did it. Swallowing like that, right? But all of that can be so triggering. And now through this understanding the lens of autism, I understand how to minimize. Coco! Hold, please. There's a little too much kittening and mommy kittening going on. For those of you wanting to meet Bear, this is my new little baby, and he is so cute and so cuddly, but right now he's chasing after Coco. He loves to lay in my lap, but right now he's in playtime. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. So that's important to look at. but how you set up your environment and not being so like, I'm sorry, like trying to create success for yourself with your issues. You might not always do so. And then learning to manage the dysregulation from the sensory issues. It's like, it's important to own. It's not about you, it's about the sounds or whatever. But just seeing that through the lens of like, this is what triggers me, and I'm going to need to modify my environment. Number 8, being out of whack from when we're not in routines. And so for me, I like to travel and do things, but it takes another level like skill set to deal with like the hotel room and the smells and the changes and all of those things. And so essentially like when we're not in our routine, like I'm right now, I have a bunch of kids back living with me suddenly for many reasons. And so I'm in my bedroom hiding out, and our house is very, very small. You guys. I'm sorry, that's triggering me just because I know they're playing, and that this is the process of introducing a new kitten, but sometimes it gets a little hairy, and then all of a sudden Coco will be like loving on him and snuggling. So anyway, but the bottom line is that like feeling outside ourselves and dysregulated from the routine changes. And I don't want that to hold me back, but for you looking at, setting yourself up once again for success with routines, bringing things that you really need. If you have extra travel items that help you stay on track, or if you need to go to the gym every day, you do that in your hotel, or exercise, whatever it is just looking at that and understanding that when you're outside of routine, that a lot more is going to come up, and you need a lot more resources sometimes to deal with it. And you might not have them for, traveling, being tired. So having compassion for yourself, but also looking at how to keep those in place in some ways. Number 9, oversharing. This was something I did so much that I thought was only a trauma response. And my daughter loves to imitate me, like being at the drive-thru at Cane's and, oh, I'll take a number 4. And by the way, did you know that my neighbor has this thing going on? I mean, I don't do it that badly, but my daughter's always messing with me about that. But I had a lot of shame about it. When I first got divorced, I overshared to everyone. And I knew it was because I realize even now I was ashamed to, I never wanted to be divorced. And then I had essentially full custody of 4 children, ages 1 to 9. And that wasn't normal. And the divorce wasn't normal. And so I was like probably trauma dumping on people that I shouldn't have shared with. But now I understand. I still do it. I don't do it as much. Actually, I became much more reserved and not sharing anything for a long time. But I'll still say like random stuff to the drive-through person. I also think it's my anxiety that I just like feel uncomfortable. Like, what am I supposed to say? So I say sometimes dumb stuff, but trying to like understand, have compassion, work on it. Looking at scripting. Sometimes that feels like I'm saying the right thing, but it's not the right thing. Sometimes I stutter when I get going. My brain is going really fast, or whatever, with a client, or just having more compassion. And lastly, feeling most like kind of guilty, but myself when I'm in hobbies, and whether it's writing or painting, and like really celebrating that, understanding that I don't think I recognize how important those things were enough for me. I'm writing on a project now, and I'm really struggling to be on social media. I have not posted on TikTok. As you know, I got my phone stolen, and since everything that's happened, and I just keep waking up and I can get on it from my laptop, and it's just making me feel really bad. And because of making my courses and other things I want to share, I do want to connect and make content, but I'm struggling. And so, sometimes we need to lean into our hobbies more until we come up with a plan or a strategy, or we work through something. So before understanding autism, I don't think I got how restorative and replenishing and valuable and important something like learning a new skill, hobby, watching a podcast, or learning something new can be so important. So all of these are about acceptance and embracing yourself and loving yourself and challenging yourself where you need to and having compassion. I can't take it. Hold on. Okay, now I just have to hold bear until the end of this video. Anyway, the bottom line is that understanding these dynamics is really important. And it really has given me a new lens with which to love on myself and also advocate for myself. It's like, look, and understanding this in my kids, everything is helping all of us speak with a new language. And it's such a less harsh judgmental language. It's like you're not being a pain in the butt. You might be a pain in the butt, but you're really doing these things because your brain is making it difficult for you. And that's okay. There are ways to work through that. And ways to accept it. And maybe some days are just not peopling days, for example, or they're not errand days. And that's okay. It's a day to dive into knitting or painting or your writing or whatever, or just learning. So anyway. Anyway, those have just really changed my life and the way I think about things. And for so long, I just felt like, God, I can present this image of this psychologist, or I just said that weird, whatever it is. But deep inside, it was like this shame posture that, yeah, certainly came from my childhood and trauma. And frankly, as I've said, my adulthood trauma has been way worse than my childhood, both PTSD and complex PTSD. But I didn't understand that these things also make me who I am, and gave me the courage to, for example, I couldn't do a room full of therapists and social workers and networking, but I could make videos, and I could reach people that way and share my passion that way. And I enjoy that so much more. So just celebrate who you are. Just lean into it. Do the research. Frankly, getting a diagnosis or not can be negative or positive depending upon your needs, so research that. What country you're living in, all of those things right now might even be more important to research. But it is important to celebrate that all of these things also make you wonderfully and beautifully who you are. So thank you for being here. I'm sorry for all of you who have sensory issues with the sound today. See, I'm talking fast. I'm sorry for all of you who have sensory issues with my cat sounds today. But I thank you for being here. Have a good day. And I'm curious to see, is there anything that you've noticed that when you look through the lens of autism or neurodivergence, ADHD, that you've been able to reframe and embrace or understand more about yourself? If you feel like sharing, I'd love for you to do that, because I think it helps all of us validate and love on ourselves more. So that's it. Don't forget to follow me on Substack. I just posted a new one yesterday talking about borderline autism, the film Mother's Instinct, and I shared an amazing, I'm going to make it again today because, the autistic thing, once you like something, you have to have it 5,000 times. The snickerdoodle recipe, which I like snickerdoodles. I don't necessarily obsess over them, but I'm telling you, the recipe I posted using gluten-free flour, they were insane. My kids ate them all. We ate them all within 24 hours. Anyway, I try to post healthy things, but sometimes you need a good old sweet treat. All right. Thanks for being here. Have a good day. I'll see you soon. Bye.